Welcome back to another episode of the Mile 40 podcast. The show continues to experiment, and I'm really excited with regards to what we have for you in store today. The joke here is that you have three guys who are pretty used to talking on a microphone. You would think this is going to come natural, but we're going to dive in and see. I'm happy to share that today I have Richard Harris and Scott Leese. They are the host of the Surf and Sales podcast. To give you a little bit of insight on the podcast, everyone is looking for help in sales, yet so few are willing to give it unselfishly. They've teamed up to bring their best advice from their own life experiences, real world job experiences, and what they see sales reps and leaders do right and equally do wrong so you can be the best at your craft as well. Thank you both for coming on the show today. Really appreciate it.
No worries. Scott, what do you think of that? That was my script. I wrote that for us so he could...
I mean, it's amazing, but the delivery was fantastic. So I think you're hired to do our intro from now on. Appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you both. And so for the audience, the funny thing is I usually send an email out to the guests on the show just to give me some information in advance. This is the first time that I had people refuse to give me a bio. In fact, Richard suggested that I kick off this show by asking each of you to give your own bio and kind of break it down on here.
Well, you go first, Richard, since you rejected his request.
Oh, please. You would have rejected his request too. So.
Well, actually, you know what? Let's mix things up here. Richard, why don't you give me Scott's bio? Scott, you give me Richard's bio.
Yeah. There we go. The best joke about Scott is, having known him for so many years, is I still don't know what he fucking does for a living. Even though I convinced him to quit his W-2 and get a consulting gig. But no, seriously, Scott is a lifetime practitioner of overcoming challenges and obstacles, physically, mentally, medically. He's a natural competitive athlete and a great mind in sales. He understands how to help and build someone's self-esteem and wisdom. He's got a degree in psychology, which is the one thing I wish I had done differently in college. And he's been a 6-time VP of sales, 4-time founder. And he shares in the rawest form possible. I mean, he'll share anything. You ask him anything, he'll tell you. And so fortunate to have him as not just a partner in some business stuff, but really is a really good friend in my life. So that's my bio for Scott.
Scott, it looks like he was about to shed a tear sharing his bio. It's clear he really likes you. I hope you can match the emotion there.
I got to deliver here. Richard is one of the most caring and empathetic sales leaders out there. He's been running his own sales training and consulting business for, I think, about a dozen years or so now, if that's right. Does trainings all over the world with big, small, medium-sized companies. Prior to that, he was a sales leader in the corporate world, got started way back in the day in sales in the newspaper advertising business. Graduated from U of A, so he's a rival of mine since I went to Arizona State. And co-founded Surf and Sales Summit, which is a mini sales and leadership conference in Costa Rica that we jointly host for 5-6 years now. We're on our 10th event, and real good friend of mine, of course, and soon to be an accomplished author as he puts the finishing touches on his first book.
I love that. Are we allowed to ask you questions about the book?
Absolutely. I can tell you that I think my gestation period is almost equal to that of an elephant, like 4 years. That's how long I've been working on this thing.
Why don't you give us a little bit of insight with regards to the project?
It is, it's a project talking about sales and understanding the sales mindset, both at a personal and professional level. And then it has a bunch of tactics in it too. Like it's actually a playbook too. Like, I think I'm a big fan of very use case oriented stuff. So things like how to negotiate with procurement. Right? Nobody knows how to do that. Nobody's ever talked about it. Do you know procurement actually goes to sales training to learn how to negotiate with us? How many of us have ever done that? How to understand the mindset, how to understand how people think as humans, and how we bring the humanity back into sales. That's probably the high level version of it. and it's a journey. So.
Love it. I think one thing that the three of us can really agree upon is that sales is a critical factor of essentially every element in life. I know that on the outside now, someone might look at me and just look at my corporate profile and think, oh, he works in sales. But the truth of the matter is I've worked in sales since I was, a young boy trying to make friends. And so I think that what you all are doing with regards to your platform is extremely critical, not just from success in the corporate world, but even beyond it in day-to-day life. And I want to dig deeper with regards to your personal journeys, and we'll build up to how you decided to come together here. So, Scott, let me kick off with you. I know that at one point, and even today, you've been very involved in athletics. Can we share a little bit about your background there and how it played a role in your life?
Yeah, I grew up playing every sport imaginable as a little kid. Had to kind of narrow it down a little bit into high school, and then had the opportunity to play Division I soccer or Division I tennis, and could never find a school that would let me play both. So, little glimpse into my personality. Rather than going to one of those big schools, I said, the hell with you, and went to a small Division II school where I could play both. So I had essentially a full ride to play tennis and soccer in college, and played some soccer after school. And it's just been a huge part of my life, learning how to be a part of a team, learning how to lead a team, learning work ethic, how to not get too high when you win and not get too low when you lose, bounce back from, missed shots or bad games and things like that. And I think, it's just really shaped who I am. I'm a hyper competitive person still to this day. And it all got started when I was young.
I want to hold on, because I know this story, and you wouldn't know to ask this story. Is Scott, tell them how you made the soccer team. Come on, I know this story.
Yeah.
I love this story.
So this is funny. So there is school sports and club sports, like select travel sports, right?
Yep.
So I was playing select travel soccer, but not high school soccer up until my junior year. I was playing basketball because they were kind of at the same time, and I wanted to play everything. So my junior year in basketball, I had started to grow my hair out. And the basketball coach, I was going to be a junior, and I had a good chance of starting. Worst case scenario would have been like the sixth man, pretty important role. I started to grow my hair out, and the coach was like, "Hey, Scott, you got to cut your hair." He told me and one of my buddies, Chris, "You guys got to cut your hair. Like, this is basketball, whatever." And I didn't believe him. I thought he was joking. And I came back, practice the next couple of days, and he's like, "No, seriously, like, you guys need to cut your hair." So I reached out to my buddies who were on the high school soccer team and said, "Listen, I have no relationship with the high school soccer coach, but you guys know me. I've played with you forever. Like, I for sure, can be on the team. What's the spot that is like most likely that I could win a starting position?" Okay. So they tell me the spot. It's like right fullback. Okay. So I quit the basketball team because they were going to force me to cut my hair. I went to soccer tryouts with like 2 or 3 days left. The very first day of practice, I found the kid who was currently the starting right fullback that all my friends said was the biggest liability. And the first chance I got on a 50-50 ball, I knocked him flat on his back.
Oof.
And the coach kind of, made a huge deal. It was like, whoa, what? Calm down. What's going on here? Da, 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 da. And he's like, "What's your name, Leese? All these guys said that you know how to play." I'm like, "Yep. You're going to remember my name now." And made the team, stole that guy's starting spot, was a captain, not that year, but by my senior year, I was captain of the high school soccer team. And we won the first ever North State championship in school history in my senior year. So Richard loves to hear that kind of story. It gives you a little bit of insight into my personality.
That's awesome. Whatever it takes. And Scott, I know right before we hopped on, you said you grew up in the Buffalo region. Where'd you go to high school?
Well, I didn't grow up there. My family is from there.
Got it.
My parents grew up there and went to Niagara University.
Got it.
But I actually grew up in a small town called Chico, California, Northern California. Yeah.
Got it. And I know you're based in Austin now. Richard, let's talk a little bit about you with regards to where'd you grow up, and a little bit of your background before you kind of delved into this world.
Yeah, I grew up in Macon, Georgia. So in the deep South, as a nice Jewish kid, there were three other kids my age who were Jewish in our area. Oh, one of them was my cousin, Billy, and this other girl who lived like 30 miles away in another town. So I got out as fast as I could. So when I was 18, I still go home. I have family there. I do like it, but it just, wasn't the right place for me. Went to college in Arizona, U of A, as Scott said, then moved to Denver, then moved to Cleveland, and then moved to San Francisco, finally, where I live in the East Bay right now. So, what more do you want to, like, I can tell you all kinds of stories, but.
You know what I'm trying to direct at here is I want to know the moment in your younger years where you realized that sales was going to be a fundamental part of how you succeed. And I'm not necessarily looking for something in your career.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
looking for
easy.
a personal moment.
Yeah. So I was probably I'm one of the few people where, like, going into sales just was, I don't know if I would call it an ambition, but it's where I started. And I really wanted to be in management. So, my first job in high school was, just selling at the Gap, right? Old school jeans. Like, this is so long ago. People don't even know this. Gap didn't even have their own jeans. We just sold Levi's, right?
Huh.
Like that was it. And, but I always knew I was always the kid who didn't want to wear socks, didn't want to wear a tie, didn't want to conform. And I thought, oh, this is a good high school job. Sales, business, make some money. And I can wear jeans and t-shirts. When I get out of college, this is what I'll go do. And I'll get into management. And that's what I did. So my last semester in college, I went and got a job at the Gap. Was very entitled. I thought for sure when I graduated, I'd get offered a management job. I did so bad, I got fired. And I had to beg. I don't know if Scott even knows this story. I had to beg to come back. Like, what are you doing? This is my career. Da, da, da. So they put me on the on-call thing, and they would make me, I had to call in 2 hours ahead to see if I had to come in, and had to, like, memorize all the color names and do all this stuff. And I earned my way back in. And that's how I got my first management job out of college. So,
I don't think I knew that. That kind of reminds me of like being a substitute teacher where you call in every morning and see if there's a job for you that day.
Right. Huh. Totally. Really? That's what it was. So, that was the pivotal one that confirmed I wanted to be in business, sales, and also really confirmed, like, okay, you got to put in a little more effort than just, thinking you're entitled. That doesn't mean my entitlement went away, though. That still probably has hurt me in my life more than it has helped me.
Well, sales is definitely humbling. And I think one of the things that I've learned along the way is that in order to really be successful, you need to be okay with falling down and getting back up, okay with failure. I mean, like, okay with not necessarily landing where you thought you would. In your example, getting fired from the Gap when you thought, you deserve the world at that point. And that happens over and over again in sales. Scott, with regards to you, was there a moment, in your younger years where you kind of started to lean towards sales as just a fundamental part of your life?
Yeah, but it was a very, very different story. We talked about my athletic career a little bit, but when I was 23 years old, I got super, super sick. And without going into tons of detail, proceeded to spend the next 4 years fighting for my life in the hospital. Had 9 major surgeries, 4 life-saving surgeries, got addicted to opioids, had to kick off with all that. So everything that I had studied in university, both as an undergrad and in grad school, kind of flew out the window, right? In my mind, at least. And I had no real direction as I was reclaiming my health. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And I had a college tennis teammate who coincidentally was working for Richard at the time, who told me, hey, you should check out sales and, give it a shot. Like, you're charismatic, you like to argue or debate and, try to get things your way. He's like half giving me shit, right? But also, like, legitimately saying you're the most competitive guy I know, I do really well in this. And we had a couple other teammates who were also in sales. And so that was really the first moment where somebody, set me towards sales. I didn't have to have a degree in selling. I didn't have to have work experience in selling necessarily. I just had to find an early stage startup that was willing to, give somebody a shot. So that's how I got into sales right there.
But the best part of this story is that his buddy Tony, and we didn't know this till about 3 years ago when Tony told us. Tony brought Scott's resume to me, apparently, said, you should interview my buddy. He's really competitive. He's on the tennis team. I played tennis with him. He'd be really good in sales. And I wouldn't even interview Scott because he had no sales experience. And so I wouldn't even interview him. Fast forward, I don't know, a few years later, maybe 3 or 4.
5 years later, maybe something like that.
Maybe. It's 2008. I get laid off from that job. Recession. I call Tony and I'm like, hey, do you know anything? Some humble pie for a VP of sales to call a rep. At least for me, it was. And he's like, yeah, you should call my buddy Scott, talk to him. And I call Scott. Scott hires me and I take 3 steps down. I went from VP of sales to sales team manager.
Yeah.
And then we had no recollection of this story till about 3 years ago when Tony told us. So the best part is that, I rejected Scott. And of course I take all the credit for his competitiveness because he's probably fuck that guy. He doesn't know. So, that's the humorous part of this story.
You fueled his fire. He came back and then he hired you ultimately.
But it's also funny because I bet if you just ask the general public about us and our personalities and whatnot, a lot of people think that I'm grouchier and Richard's more like the nice one, whatever. And he is most of the time. But then there's these moments like that where he's just like, nah, I'm not fucking interviewing this guy. Right. It turns out he's the grouchy one. Yes. And I'm actually potentially a little kinder at times. So it's funny. It's a funny story.
Yeah.
It's a funny story.
No, you guys have a good dynamic, I can tell. And so Scott, I want to kind of ask you a question because I've noticed in my career, everyone has their own unique background. Everyone has had their own adversity one way or another. But I found that people who have faced, traumatic adversity, generally go about sales in a very unique way in the sense that they've learned at one point, it can't get any worse than this, right? Well, what's the worst thing that could happen, right? And then you find a lot of people who maybe, fortunately haven't faced that kind of situation. And then they go about sales worried about rejection. I want to talk a little about the perspective that your own experience kind of gave you. In my world, that's where I feel sales came so strongly to me. I was at a point where, I was going to either lose my life or not. So what's the worst thing that happened if I lose a sale? And so can you talk about that a little bit and how that maybe has played a role in your career?
Yeah, it's the same thing that you just talked about. When I first got that first sales job, I felt like the phone weighed 1,000 pounds and I was absolutely terrified. And it took me about 3 days before I kind of got a reality check and a gut punch. And it was like, what are you worrying about? Who cares if you get fired from this job? Who cares if some buyer tells you to get lost or hangs up on you or whatever? Who cares if your boss is it's like, I have already dealt with the hardest thing, hopefully, I'll ever go through my whole entire life and come out the other side. So what I actually have is a superpower. I have perspective that other people don't have. I have a sense of urgency that other people might not have. I have a sense of appreciation for each and every opportunity put in front of me. So I should be fearless. And, I started to really lean into that. And every time in my career, I started to face, challenges or adversity, including right now, when it's a difficult economic year and the market's tough for people, I remind myself of that. Like, I'm still healthy. I'm still able to work. I'm still able to do all these different things that I wasn't able to do before when I would have, given anything to have the opportunity to fail at a cold call. So having that perspective is just like so important. And unfortunately, for me at least, it took 4 years of, near-death experiences to really have it like sink in, that lesson. And hopefully other people, have it without having to go through, difficult times like that. But it is always the thing I come back to. And I tell people this all the time in my teaching and my coaching, just think about the hardest thing you've ever been through. You don't have to tell me what it is if you don't want to. Just think about it. Most of us would hear your story and think, I never could have got through that. I have no idea how you did it. And fall back on that strength. And fall back on, when you were in those moments, what you would have given to have the opportunity to have this job, stretch to try to hit a quota, fail at hitting that deal. And you'll get this perspective of, you know what, everything's going to be okay. Because nothing will be as bad as that. Everything's going to be okay.
A follow-up question for Scott on this, and I've never asked you this. How hard or what was the moment when you said, because you went and played professional sports in Europe, you were going for it, where you finally said, my body can't do this. I'm going to have to give up on that dream. And what was that like? Like, was there a moment? When did you know? And then how did you reconcile that? Because I think that's just a mindset, sales. I don't care what it is, right? But I'm just curious to get.
Yeah. I held on to that for a really long time. On some level, I'm still holding on to it. I want to be able to go do certain things, and my body just physically won't allow me to do it. But I think the moment for me where it was like, this is forever going to be different, was when they came in the first time and were like, we need to do surgery and we need to do it like now. And I can remember sitting there going, whoa, what are we talking about here? You're going to, literally remove an organ from my body. This is not something that most 24, 25-year-old kids go through. Like, this is for a forever kind of change. Right. So that was the moment where I realized, like, this dream is over, let's just say. As far as fully letting it go, like I said, I don't know if I've really fully let it go.
When did you accept it? Right. Because
that's what I'm saying. I'm saying, I don't know if that's acceptance or not. It was a recognition, but I don't know if I've ever fully accepted it. Because
I try to go back and play, like, after you got out of the hospital after those 4 years.
I did. I built my body back up. It took a number of years. It took until I was, I think, 31, 32 years old. So you're talking 4+ years of slowly exercising. I started surfing during this period of time and started trying to run and things like that. And I got myself back to where I was playing soccer again. Not at like a super high level, but, high enough to satisfy me. And I was doing really, really well. And then I blew my knee out to bits. ACL, PCL, MCL, meniscus, all in one shot. And that moment was like, this is it, done. But I'm telling you, even now, accepting that and uttering these words sucks. It sucks.
Yeah.
I want to go play adult league, beer league soccer. I want to go hit tennis balls with my brother. I want to go do this, that, and the other. And I just can't, and I try. And when I push myself, my body rejects me and I get injured and all these things start to happen. But I still don't know if I've fully been able to accept it, because I try to replicate this competitiveness in so many things that I do in business. And, I don't know. I compete with Richard in terms of, like, whose LinkedIn post does better or something stupid like that. Right. Like, I'm always trying to replicate that competitive moment.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever accepted and fully let it go, Richard.
I think that's truly innate. I mean, even in the sales world, the mindset is that the first no is just your first step to yes. And I think that, as people in this industry, there's always just a glimmer of hope that we can have what we want out there. And I think that's what makes someone successful in this field. I want to make sure that, we kind of touch on both of you. I want to ask you, Scott, with regards to how Richard has inspired you over the years.
I'm excited for this. I want this recording. I want a snippet. I am so excited.
Putting Scott on the spot because like Richard's
twice in a week. Twice in a week, someone's asked us to describe us. So I'm curious. This is good. I love this.
Well, Richard is certainly the one who pushed me to go into business for myself. It took me a number of years to finally acquiesce and do it. But he was always the one kind of in my ear saying, you should do this. I think you'd be good at it. I'm doing really good at it. And, in his way of poking and prodding me when he was kicking my butt, in terms of income or able to go on this trip and do this thing with his flexibility and freedom that I didn't have. And so that's the main thing that I would remember is he was the one who was telling me, go out on your own.
Do you remember what I said?
Well, I don't know specifically.
I remember saying this to you because this is why I love to take credit for all your success. I said, Scott, I bet I still have this text because I think I texted it. I appreciate that you like what I'm doing. I bet it annoys you on some level because you probably think you can do it better than I can.
I believe that. That 100% sounds like a text Richard would send me. And
that's where I'm a dick.
My response to it is like quintessential Scott. It's like, okay, fucker. Yeah. Like, I am going to try to do better than you now. I'll also remember because I had this like half-brained idea about surfing sales while we were on a family vacation together. And he also challenged me right then and there. It was like, well, why don't you build it then? Right. And I remember saying to him, well, why don't you fucking help me build it? It's two people better than one kind of thing. And he said, yeah, okay, well, if you go for it, then I'll do it with you. So I think I sort of see him as somebody that's always like pushing me to try this, do this thing, because a lot of that stuff doesn't come super naturally for me. The podcast was his idea. We didn't start off, Surf and Sales wasn't a podcast originally. It was just the event. It was just the event, the Surf and Sales Summit.
The summit? Oh, wow.
Yeah. We were just doing these events. And I guess this is our fourth year doing the podcast now. So there was 2-3 years of events with no podcast. And Richard was like, we should do the podcast, So that's my lasting memory of Richard, from a work and inspiration standpoint. Is sort of like pushing me to get out of my comfort zone and do some stuff.
You guys are an interesting couple. It's like you guys. It in a weird way, it sounds like a healthy marriage.
It's like the odd couple.
We are entirely.
I could totally see the fit here. Let's just talk about Surf and Sales really quick to give everybody a background with regards to talk a little bit about where the idea came from. The idea started with summits. Can you guys explain the premise of the summits?
Go for it, Richard. You take this.
Yeah. So we were on vacation, super fortunate that our wives get along and our kids get along. We each have 2 boys and they're all within a year of each other and they really do love hanging out together. So we decided to go to Costa Rica. My boys had just learned to surf. And I remember texting Scott, like, let's go to vacation to Costa Rica. Like I sent him this picture from Georgia. And he's like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah. And Scott's pretty notorious for, yeah, and then sometimes not actually instigating it. But as soon as I said surfing, he was all over it. So we go down there for Thanksgiving. And like Scott said, we're walking off the beach. He's like, why the fuck do we got to go to Omaha to the Hampton Inn? No offense to anybody in Omaha or the Hampton Inn, for a sales conference. How come nobody does something here? And I said, that's a really good idea. I said, why don't you do it? And he's like, well, why don't you help me? And sort of came there and the whole premise. And then we brought in our third partner, Jeff Coleman, who's now a good friend of mine, but was really good friends with Scott. And he's like the logistics master. He rents the houses and gets the photographers and gets the surfing lessons and gets he just organizes the whole thing. And the whole premise was smaller is better, right? I've been to Dreamforce, which is fun for what it is, but you're one of 50 or 100,000 people. What about those intimate conversations? And the best part of those big events are, as I always call them, the in-between moments where you meet some random person and that kind of stuff. And unfortunately, they're often at a bar and there's so much booze involved. And so we really wanted to create something very different. And, Scott's idea and Jeff's idea was, well, let's keep it a little more small and intimate where you can get to know each other. And what's so unique is that, we go down to Costa Rica. It's about 15 to 18 people. We spend about 4 hours a day on content. There, a couple hours a day with surf lessons for those who want to surf. If you don't surf, you don't have to. No one's forcing it. And the rest of the time, you're having those in-between moment conversations. You're sitting there talking to someone you would never get to talk to. There's an SDR talking to a founder of a Series B or C startup. Where does an SDR get to do that? Where does a founder get to hear an SDR perspective that's not one of their own, right? And or it becomes an interview or deals get made. And it's not like where it happens, it just sort of happens organically. And so we create a lot of those in-between moments, and it's very chill. It's not a drunk fest. It's definitely not a bro fest. We, every first night we have this, no asshole policy. Nobody's ever been sent home, but we will if anybody does something stupid. And that's just so we've just made it really intimate that way. And then the other cool thing is, when you come down to Shoy, right? One of the things we will do is, we turn to the people coming and we'll say, if there's a topic that you're passionate about and you want to present for 30 or 45 minutes for one of the sessions, come do it. We've had people do, I do stuff on mental health, which is not something that normally happens. Scott does stuff on how to create your side hustle. Jeff does one about storytelling, like all these different things. We have a beach challenge where, we let a couple of people come in and present their business challenge, and we'll divide the group into two. And it's like a consulting practice. Like you get like 20 minutes to present. Each team has 10 minutes to ask questions. And then the teams go off and they have to create and present their advice back. So here's someone like you coming in and you get all this free consulting advice. All these people have never done a consulting project. They've never been a part of one in any way, shape, or form. And so it just becomes this great thing. And oh, by the way, we're doing it at sunset on the beach. It's like,
doesn't get better than that.
Right. So that's probably a little bit longer version you were looking for, but that's probably the best way I could describe it.
That's great.
Did I miss anything?
No, you nailed it, man.
As a runner, there's nothing I love more than to explore new areas when I travel. For years, I've had to deal with the hassle of packing up loads of sweaty, smelly, wet articles of clothing on my way back home. And for years, I believed that there was no better option than the plastic bag that I had to scour to find on the last day of my trip. Then I was introduced to the Cama bag, and it changed everything about how I travel. Designed for us all, from yogis to endurance athletes and everyone in between, Cama's premium signature bag layers innovative fabrics that preserve your favorite gear for all your activity to come. The Cama bag is constructed using durable, high-quality fabrics. Surrounded by a thick, waterproof shell, the unique inner layers work together to absorb odor and wick moisture. Gone are the unpleasant smells, bacteria growth from sustained wetness, and those single-use plastic bags that, quite frankly, accomplish nothing. Visit www.camafit, spelled CAMAFIT.com, and use code MILE40 to take 15% off your order and enjoy the endless odor and moisture-free days ahead. The Cama bag absolutely changed the game for me as a runner, and I know it will do the same for you. As you were saying all that, I mean, a lot of the topics that you hit on, especially with regards to some of those sessions when it comes to mental health in particular. Mental health has come up on this podcast numerous times, and it's just a subject that's just so important to so many people across industries. And the fact that you touch on it with regards to what you're doing with Sales and Summit is very, Surf and Sales, is very, very special. Before we got on, you had told me how important community was to you with regards to the focus, not just of Surf and Sales, but your grander mission. And clearly the summit is where community is built. Can you talk a little about the community that you have been engaging with over the last couple of years? And is it across industries? Obviously, it's across different levels, as you kind of mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk about mine and Scott's. This is one of those parts where Scott's better at me than something. Or he'll take an idea that I do and he'll like 10x it, which is okay. Only a little jealousy. As my 15-year-old says, Scott owes me 25% of his business. But so I've always been a community guy. I started a long time ago with Sales Hacker when LinkedIn had communities that were really, really robust. And just giving away advice for free, I just sort of realized like, oh, that's good for me. That's good for my career. That's good for helping other people. It's altruistic. I feel good when I help. It started for me when I didn't have a job. And it finally was like, oh, this gives me value and worth. Not that that is my value, but I feel like if I can help someone else, even when I'm down and out, that's good for me mentally and it's good for someone else. That's where it started for me. So I started with Sales Hacker. I then became part of there's another great group called Modern Sales Pros that Pete Kazanji runs. A big part of that one. The Surf and Sales community, every session we have WhatsApp groups, and we've got 10 WhatsApp channels going from every session, over the years. So I'm a big fan of that. Scott's taken that and put it on, massive healthy steroids. So I'll let Scott sort of explain his version of community.
Yeah, the Surf and Sales community is super tight knit, but it's really small. And it intentionally is only going to grow by 40 or 50 people per year, because we do these summits 2-3 times a year. And, there's 15 to 17 people not in the founding group who come. So it grows small, but it's really tight. Right. And so the idea when COVID and the pandemic first happened was, what can I do to congregate salespeople and sales leaders? Like, people don't have anywhere to hang out. They don't have anywhere to talk shop or bitch and moan or have a cocktail. So I started this community called Thursday Night Sales, and Thursday Night Sales turned into the world's largest virtual sales happy hour. Wow. During a 3-year run that we just signed off of earlier this year. And, we were having 400 or 500 people every Thursday night at our events. Right. And then what I've done after that is I created a company called GTM United. It's a sales and revenue community combining people from all different functions. It's not just sales. And there's health challenges and meetups, live and virtual, in person and virtual. And, just kind of taking some of the things that I've learned from Surf and Sales and Thursday Night Sales and applying and pushing forward. So it's a big part of, what we do. You could argue that 2 of the businesses that I run outside of my consulting business are community-based, and Richard, at least one of his. So it's a big part of what we do. And that doesn't even count our LinkedIn community, the greater LinkedIn community that we engage with and interact with every day. And we've got, 200,000 people, between the 2 of us, something like that we are connected with and who follow us on LinkedIn. So it's an everyday thing that we work towards, building, growing, and helping people out.
Got it. One of the things that I think folks such as the 3 of us can notice is when we come across, genuine people in the sales industry, and, being that we've done this for so long, we can tell the difference between someone who's just good at sales and then someone who we'd want to work with in sales. And I kind of want to use this as an opportunity to knock off some of the misconceptions around the industry in general. I'm a big believer that in sales, it's not about, winning all the time. It's about, both people on both sides of the desk kind of coming away with something better than what they started out with. And, given your background and a lot of the work that you do, I get the sense that you teach sales from a very holistic approach. And it's not necessarily about winning the deal every time, but it's about the right deal and the longer term impact of how you go about it. Can you, either of you, speak a little bit with regards to how your sales approaches have been refined over the years. I mean, Richard, I'm thinking about you starting off at Gap and how things started out. I'm sure how you sell now is a lot different. It's not necessarily about making the numbers every time as much as it's about making sure that, there's a longer term impact for your business and for the client.
It's interesting you say that, because I don't think I had that realization until I was probably, keep in mind I was 16 in high school, 22 in college. I don't think I had the empathetic realization until my 30s when I started doing therapy, right? So I was still sort of this, and still am, angry, entitled guy. I'm just a little less angry. And then I figured it out. And then once I started my therapy, I realized how much of this was business and how much business was life. And then part of that was really trying to sit and listen to people, and then realizing my whole impatience with people. Like, that's the hardest part for me, is I was the old school, laptop, screen manager. People would come in for one-on-ones and I'd be trying to answer an email at the same time. Like, I was horrible, but somehow I could charm my way into some leadership role. I don't know. So from that, I started to learn like what it really meant and how to become more of a human. And that's, my mantra now is that when people ask me, what do? I tell them I teach reps how to earn the right to ask questions, which questions to ask and when. So there's a little bit more empathy built into how I do everything. And so for me, that's where that piece came in. I can go deep on mental health and how that all came in for me. But I think that's probably the best answer for your question.
Before we go to Scott, was there a specific event or situation that arose that, kind of led you to seek out help? And if it's personal, that's fine. But
no. I share this story. I'm like Scott. Like, this is my superpower. So, I woke up frozen in bed like that. Like, not kidding. Like, I couldn't move. I was in a ball. I was crying, and like all kids, even as an adult, I called my mom. She's like, "Well, why don't you come back to Georgia and just chill out?" And I was living in San Francisco, and my immediate response, I didn't even know if I was going to say it, was, "Yeah, but if I do that, the city wins." And I was having a hard time fitting into this late 90s internet bubble where people are making all this money and I'm feeling inadequate, being sold in newspaper ads. So that was the quintessential moment for me. And then learned that I have depression, not a severe version. I've never wanted to hurt myself or hurt others. And started my journey to better mental health, and then getting that humanity in myself, and then learning how to do that in business. And then even a few years ago, I learned, through one of my kids, that I have ADHD. So now I take medication for that. So I'm a big fan of all those things. And those things become my superpower, because now I can see them coming before they hit me. And because of that, I can, I can at least choose how I'm going to let something happen a little bit. And doesn't always go away. It's still there, but I've never, it's never terrible. Like, it's not all that terrible stuff. But that for me was the moment.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think that one important thing to kind of point out here is that between the both of you, you guys both referred to these moments in life as being your ultimate superpowers and not your crutches. And I think that's something that unifies you and really kind of sticks true to what the message of Mile 40 is all about. And so, I'm really glad that we kind of got there, because there are multiple people listening to this show right now that could be wondering, these guys are talking a lot about sales and, how sales impacts every part of their life. But what they don't necessarily realize, and where I think we just got, is the fact that there's this ability to refine, to reposition, to affirm the moments in life where we think we are weak. And, Richard, we have a huge base of listeners here from New York. And, the concept of the city breaking you and not making it, you talk about San Francisco, which is right up there with New York. That is just a unanimous kind of experience that so many people have to go through here. And I remember myself, I came in wanting to work on Wall Street in the middle of the financial crisis. and the city will break you. And so thank you so much for kind of sharing that and giving us something to relate to. Scott, Richard's answer was so good that I lost my train of thought here, and forgot what my next question is for you. But let me ask you with regards to, he mentioned his mantra. Are there any mantras that you personally live by, or that anything that you kind of lean in on with regards to keeping your narrative going?
I don't know if I have any big mantras necessarily that I live by. I've been talking a lot in the last few years about kind of shrinking the delta between idea and action, and kind of making decisions faster, trusting your gut a little bit more, not overanalyzing and overthinking things, taking some chances and stuff like that. I'm a big believer in action over words, so don't tell me, just do. Those are the two that come to mind. But I'm not a big. It's not like I'm waking up every morning and like writing out my mantra in a journal, or listening to this like same meditative message, through my stereo or anything like that. But I do try to keep those two messages in mind that I mentioned to you.
For both of you, and either one of you can answer this question.
I have one for Scott.
Yeah.
Scott's mantra, and he lives by it, and he does this when he has jobs with people, is give the little guy a shot. I can't tell you how many people I've seen on his sales floor never would have thought they'd be good in sales, come from all kinds of backgrounds, all kinds of challenges and issues. And he helps them find themselves in that. And so, and I even know, again, because I know the stories where, he's always said he was the undrafted, free agent who makes the team kind of thing. That's his mentality. And he'll go draft those undrafted free agents, and he will make them amazing, not just at sales, but help them. He finds ways to help them quit. He'll create a challenge to get them to quit smoking, because he knows that every time they take a break, that hurts the sales performance. Like anyway. So for me, it's for Scott, I think, is, give the little person a shot. Give that person who wouldn't get a shot their shot.
Yeah. But that recruiting philosophy, I have framed it before as hire somebody who can do, not somebody who has done. And we default to hiring people based on their resume or previous experiences way too much, and cutting out people who, for one reason or another, haven't had it, don't have the same thing on their resume. That doesn't mean they can't do the job.
Yeah.
Right. And that bias towards experience is really damaging. It hurts diversification of hires. It hurts DEI efforts. It hurts, women trying to get into sales leadership roles. It's really dangerous, in my opinion, to over-index on experience. So that would be my third one. I'm glad Richard brought that up. Would be, hire somebody who can do, not necessarily somebody who has done.
Richard to the rescue there. And I think that is so...
That's usually the way it goes. Richard to the rescue.
I think that is so important, and something that I believe in firmly. And honestly, something that's been a testimony to the guests that have been on this show, because a lot of the guests that have been on this show so far have succeeded when the world told them, you don't necessarily have the resume for success. And I think, to your point around diversification and getting the right voices in the room, it's just about giving people a chance. And I'm going to dig into this a little bit. We only have a couple more minutes, but I want to ask with regards to how you've been going about maybe influencing this new behavior. Are you, talking about this during your summits, or are you, somehow using your platform to push home this message? Because I think it is something that needs to be amplified.
Well, I think the answer is yes to all of those things. I in the same way, though, it wasn't one of the first things that I thought of, and Richard reminded me. It doesn't mean I make it a focal point, and maybe I should. But it naturally comes up. I've written about it periodically on LinkedIn. we certainly talk about it at events that we have and podcasts that we're on and things like that. And, I think both Richard and I feel a little bit of a weight of responsibility to do something with the microphone that we do have that, is maybe a little more important than here's my best 30-second sales pitch, best subject line to get somebody to open your email. Like, I don't really fucking care about that stuff, to be honest with you, at this point in my career. What I do care about is some of this other stuff that we're starting to touch upon and doing what we can to, kind of send the elevator back down for other people who, need a shot, need somebody who can believe in them and help them get where they're trying to go. And it's a little bit of the underdog kind of chipped on the shoulder stuff that I think that we both have. So I don't know if Richard wants to add anything, but that's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a balance. I'm even from my book perspective, like I'm very tactical, right? So I will talk about the subject lines and how to do a better pitch and all that stuff, in combination with these other topics of mental health or some other management leadership best practices, that kind of stuff. So I think that's where we have a different take on this stuff, because, he'll be like, I don't want to write about that stuff anymore. Everybody knows it. And I'm like, no, they don't. We're just tired of saying it 100 times, so, so many times can Springsteen sing Born to Run with, the same level of influence. And
I don't know how they do it.
Yeah. So, well,
that's a definite weakness of mine, is I get tired of saying the same things.
Yeah. But Scott, if the paycheck's pretty big, buddy, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I suppose if I was getting Bruce's paycheck, maybe it'd be easier, right?
Yeah. So I think it's there. I also think even in the stuff, everything we write comes from some level of thought. Even if we do write, or if I write something around, a best practice in sales, it's coming from my heart, and at least I believe it's coming from my heart of, I want to help others. Right. So there's this altruistic piece. And we sometimes get caught up in the vanity of the metrics and all those things. But that's also why we're writing, because we're trying to find things that resonate for people. And so that's the good thing. So I think it comes through. If it's not direct, it's definitely there subliminally.
Got it. I was thinking about this as you all were speaking. Adaptability. When I think about how the sales motion has changed over the last 15, 20 years, even in the last 3-4 years in particular, being adaptable. I think we're kind of in this period now where, there's people who are perhaps trying to embrace the new ways, and there are people who are trying to stick to the old ways of doing business, and there are people who are in the middle with regards to taking the good of the new ways, holding on to the good of the older ways, so on and so forth. How do you bridge this, or how do you have conversations really around just the fact that business is moving at such a fast pace right now, and talking about adaptability in general right now?
I mean, is it that different? Has business ever not been moving at an incredibly fast pace? I mean, I wonder if we went back in time 200 years, if people would have said the same thing, and 100 years if they would have said the same thing. Maybe the distance covered in terms of the speed is a little bit bigger. The leaps that we take now are bigger, but I think we've always had to adapt and change. The way that I sold the very first time I ever got on the phone is different than the way that we sell now. The way that we would build a sales organization is different now than it was back then. The way people go fundraise now is different than it was a few years ago. And you can cling to the past all you want, but you're going to lose.
Yeah.
It's a losing battle.
Yeah,
it's whether or not you're going to be a early adopter or, a late bloomer is up to you, but you're eventually going to switch. I get a kick out of people who try to tell me, well, we've been doing this business this way for 50 years, Scott. It's like, okay, quick question. Do you have an iPhone? All right, you didn't have one 50 years ago. Do you have a laptop? Didn't have one of those 50 years ago either. It's like, give me a break, man.
Yeah.
You evolve, you change your tactics. Just because this new one maybe scares you a little bit, that's a different kind of conversation. Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts around this one. Is that, some of that depends on the generation, I think, right? There are just certain things, like I'm 54 now. There are certain things I'm probably not going to change because I just don't want to deal with it. And I'm just not going to, even though they'll probably, and I'm sure my kids and my grandkids, if I ever have them, one day will say, Dad, it'd be easier. And we're like, yeah, just like the generation above us. And it's interesting in sales in particular, the whole idea of sales is that we are the instigators, judge, jury, and executioner of change for people. Like, that's what we're selling, is change and better. And yet I feel like we're the most stubborn when it comes to changing ourselves, right? Because we get so habitual. And part of that is because salespeople like some level of routine. It's repetitive, it becomes easier and that kind of stuff. So some of it is that, but I that is not my quote. I heard it a couple of weeks ago and it just really resonated with me. We are instigators of change, yet we're the last ones to want to change ourselves, even if we know that it could probably improve what we're doing. That to me is a big piece of it.
I love that. And I can't honestly think of a better way to close this out. I had other questions, but I think that that really kind of hits home right now with regards to how we look at the time right now and what's to come ahead. Before I just finally close the things out, I want to make sure if there was anything else that you all wanted to touch on with regards to maybe the future of surf and sales and a vision that you have, whether it be in the short term or in the long term. I want to give you the floor really quick.
The future of surf and sales is late November and early December. We've got 2 sessions. I think they're about 60 to 70% sold out. So we've got a few seats left for both session 10 and 11. And, you can check out our podcast if you think that we might have something interesting to say, or you just want to listen to 2 older guys rant at each other and every now and then say something nice to each other. Check out the Surf and Sales podcast. And the event is Surf and Sales, SALES.com.
I love that. Thank you both for coming on today. Really, really appreciated you. Richard, thank you for making this happen. It was a pleasure meeting you. And I can't wait for this episode to drop.
Sounds good. Us too.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.